الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Early on the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers took control of 4 commercial airliners en route to the West Coast from Boston, Newark, and Washington, D.C. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into New York's World Trade Center's North Tower. It was followed at 9:03 a.m. by United Airlines Flight 175, which hit the South Tower. Another group of hijackers flew American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. A fourth flight, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. after the passengers on board engaged in a fight with the hijackers. Its ultimate target was thought to be the Capitol in Washington, D.C.
United 93 is with you at 350, intermittent light stop. United 93 checking in 350. United 93, 350, roger. United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370. Negative contact, we're looking, United 93. Somebody call Cleveland? Okay, United 93, verify 350. United 93, verify your flight level 350. United 93, verify your level of 350. United 93, Cleveland. United 93, Cleveland. United 93, if you're at Cleveland Center, ident, please. United 1523, did you hear your company, did you hear some interference on the frequency here a couple of minutes ago, screaming?
Yes, I did, 797, and we couldn't tell what it was either.
Okay. United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center, ident.
An American 1060, a ditto on the other transmission.
The American 1060, you heard that also?
Yes, sir, twice.
Roger, we heard that also, thanks. I just wanted to confirm it wasn't some interference.
Executive 956?
Executive 956, go.
Oh, we were just answering your call. We did hear that yelling, too.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out what's going on.
They got them to sit down. Keep remaining sitting. They have a ball board. So it's
Calling Cleveland Center, you're unreadable. Say again slowly.
Sir, did you hear the transmission where the airplane that said he had a bomb on board?
Say again. Was that United 93?
Yeah, that transmission he said was unreasonable. It sounded like someone said they have a bomb on board.
That's what we thought. We just we didn't get it clear. Is that United 93 calling? Executive 956, that aircraft we believe was transmitting is 12 o'clock, flying 5 miles, turn left heading 225. I'll get you away from him. Okay, he's climbing, so I want to keep everybody away from him.
Okay, I think we got him in sight.
Delta 1989, that traffic for you is at 11 o'clock and 15 miles southbound. 41 climbing, looks like he's turning east, fly heading 360.
Hi, here's the captain. I would like to remain seated. There's one aboard, and we are going to back to the airport, and we have our demand, so please remain quiet.
Okay, it's United 93 calling. United 93, understand, have a bomb on board, go ahead. Executive 956, did you understand that transmission? Affirmative. He said there was a bomb on board. And that was all you got out of it also? Affirmative. 93, go ahead. That aircraft you can't get a hold of, has he turned to the east now? He's just turned to the east also. United 93, you hear Cleveland Center. Okay, American 10-6 and Executive 956, we just lost the target on that aircraft. Okay, 956, we had a visual on him, just stand by. Do you have a visual on him now? We did, but we lost him in the turn. You can make a turn back to a 220 heading, let me know if you can see him. Yeah, he's still there, we got him for 956. You still there? Northwest of you, about 25 miles? Affirmative for 956. Executive 956, fighting 180. Okay, we're making a turn for 956. He appears to be heading right towards us. American 1060, do you see anybody northwest of you? Can you see back that far there? We're looking now, sir. United 93, Cleveland, do you still hear the center? United 93, do you still hear Cleveland? United 93, United 903, do you hear Cleveland? United 93, United 93, Cleveland. United 93, United 93, do you hear Cleveland Center?
Do you see any activity on your right side, smoke or anything like that?
Negative, we're searching. Yeah, we do have a smoke puff now at about, probably 2 o'clock. It appears to be just a dark cloud.
On United Airlines Flight 93, black box recordings revealed that the crew and passengers attempted to seize control of the plane from the hijackers after learning through phone calls that similarly hijacked planes had been crashed into buildings earlier that morning. According to the transcript of Flight 93's recorder, one of the hijackers gave the order to roll the plane once it became evident that they would lose control of the plane to the passengers. 3 buildings in the World Trade Center complex collapsed due to structural failure on the day of the attack. When the North Tower collapsed, debris that fell on the nearby 7 World Trade Center building damaged it and initiated fires. These fires burned for hours and compromised the building's structural integrity, which led to the crumbling of the east penthouse at 5:20 p.m. and to the complete collapse of the building at 5:21 p.m. The attacks created widespread confusion among news organizations and air traffic controllers across the United States. All international civilian air traffic was banned from landing on U.S. soil for 3 days. The idea for the September 11 plot came from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who first presented the idea to Osama bin Laden in 1996. At that point, bin Laden and al-Qaeda were in a period of transition, having just relocated back to Afghanistan from Sudan. The 1998 African embassy bombings and bin Laden's 1998 fatwa marked a point of no return in bin Laden's war with the United States. As early as December 1998, the director of the Central Intelligence Counter-Terrorist Center reported to the president that al-Qaeda was preparing for attacks in the USA, including the training of personnel to hijack aircraft. In late 1998 or early 1999, bin Laden gave approval for Mohammed to go forward with organizing the attack. A series of meetings occurred in spring of 1999 involving Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Osama bin Laden, and his deputy, Mohammed Atef. Mohammed provided operational support for the plot, including target selections and helping to arrange travel for the hijackers. Bin Laden overruled Mohammed's choice of possible targets, rejecting some potential targets such as the U.S. Bank Tower in Los Angeles because there was not enough time to prepare for such an operation. Bin Laden's primary role, however, was to provide leadership for the plot, along with financial support. He was also actively involved in selecting participants for the attack. Bin Laden initially selected Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midar, both experienced jihadists who fought in Bosnia. Hazmi and Midar, arrived in the United States in mid-January 2000. In spring 2000, Hazmi and Midar took flying lessons in San Diego, California. Both spoke little English and did not do well with flying lessons. Eventually, they were relegated to the role of muscle for the hijackers. In late 1999, a group of men from Hamburg, Germany, arrived in Afghanistan, including Muhammad Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, Ziad Jarrah, and Ramzi bin al-Shabin. Bin Laden had personally selected these men for the attack. They were educated, could speak English, and had experience living in the West. New recruits were routinely screened for special skills. This practice allowed al-Qaeda leaders to also identify Hani Hajur, who already had a commercial pilot's license, as an additional participant. At 8:48 a.m., the first news reports that a plane, later identified as American Airlines Flight 11, had crashed into One World Trade Center, the North Tower. Good Morning America is interrupted at 8:51 a.m. as Diane Sawyer announces an explosion at the World Trade Center.
Now, by the entire ABC network. Good Morning America was in progress in the East Coast and the Midwest, but we're joined by the entire network just to show you some pictures at the foot of New York City. This is at the World Trade Center. Obviously a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details. There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit the World Trade Center, and you can see that there is smoke there coming out of at least two sides of the building.
And as you said, there are two towers, the tallest structures in Manhattan, on the island of Manhattan. We're trying to get people on the telephone to see what more we can learn. We have no idea if it was a plane. Was it in any sense deliberate? Was it an accident? It does seem to be that there is considerable and truly terrifying damage on some of those floors at the top.
At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into 2 World Trade Center, the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashes into the western side of the Pentagon and starts a violent fire. 9:58 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center begins to collapse. 56 minutes after the impact of Flight 175, a tremendous gray-white cloud of pulverized concrete and gypsum rushed through the streets. Its destruction is viewed and heard by a vast television and radio audience. As these events are occurring, some Americans are in shock. Others are preparing themselves for a call to arms.
September 11th, 2001, I was sitting in my den in Richmond, Kentucky. I was actually enrolled in college. I was in my final semester and was supposed to graduate that December. I was skipping class because I had woke up late, and I was sitting there watching the morning news, maybe the Today Show or something like that, and they broke in, and so there was a plane that had flown into the World Trade Center in New York City. And I thought, well, that's ludicrous. It's crazy. That's, you know, how do you fly into a building? And I think like 99% of the rest of the free world, I never thought that it was. It did not cross my mind that it was an intended attack. I thought that it was initially thought it was some kind of freak accident that the plane had taken off, had lost power, lost capabilities, and it was just a really bad day for, you know, the people that were there and the people that were on board.
And I was actually in my co-op job when the first plane hit the towers. And I've actually worked in airline finance, so that's a big deal because, you know, UPS is an airline. So, you know, my girlfriend, you know, wife now called, say, you know, a plane hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, you know, that's odd, you know, bad day for that pilot, you know, that's pretty weird. But then as soon as the second plane hit, that's when you knew, oh, you know, we're under attack. This is definitely serious. You know, you could see it on the internet for a minute, and then the internet was down, the network was crashed. You know, everybody was down to all the communication. But they did have it on a TV, and we all kind of stopped working. We gathered around, and a couple of coworkers were from New York, and they were even more stunned because they knew actually how big that building was, how many people really worked there, you know, how many people were around it. They had friends in there, and it was just like, oh my gosh. And then when the tower fell, it was even more unbelievable because you just don't expect things like that to happen or even see it in front of your eyes, even if it's on the television. So, you know, planes started getting grounded. We were trying to find places for pilots to stay. You know, we didn't, you know, basically we're trying to account for all of our airplanes and get the pilots lodging, and, you know, nobody knew when the planes would be able to fly again. So it was almost, we were doing some emergency planning there for the UPS pilots and operations, but we were still focused on the, you know, the shock of the towers and the smoke and everything that was billowing out. It was just, you just couldn't believe it. You know, there aren't any words for it.
I lived with my brother at the time, who was also a Marine, and we were sitting there watching it, and because it drew you in. It was like a train wreck almost. You couldn't help but watch it at that point. And then as we're sitting there watching TV, you see the second plane fly into the tower. And at that moment, I knew that my life had forever changed. I knew that the face of the country had forever changed.
September 11th, 2001, I had just flown back from D.C. the night before, and I remember, you know, driving past the Pentagon like just like every other time I had done that on the way to the airport. That morning, I went out to run with a fellow company commander of mine, and we're obviously 3 hours back, so it was probably, I forget what time things happened, but it was, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we get back from our run. And I remember stretching, and somebody came out and said what happened. And I think we all were just like, what are you talking about? It's not computing, it's not even possible.
For the Marines, shock turned to anger. All across America, active duty and reservists began calling in, seeking the orders they knew were to follow.
When, you know, we saw the attack on the World Trade Center, it was like, oh, this is serious. You know, this is going to be go time for us. This is probably, you know, our game time. I mean, you get activated for 2 years later, so it's almost like a long, drawn-out engagement, if you will. But as soon as it sank in that we were under attack, you know, we were already began mentally preparing ourselves to, you know, for war, for lack of a better term.
My buddy, Andy Walker, his mom was a flight attendant or stewardess based out of Boston. So he's immediately concerned because, you know, one of the flights had come out of Boston and wasn't sure. And then I remember I had friends in the Pentagon, I had friends in DC. So my day was just glued to the radio, all of us were, glued to figure out what was happening, and still just completely dumbfounded because I am not nearly as familiar with New York City, but having just driven by the Pentagon and knowing that and running by it so many times when I had been in college and whatnot, I just couldn't fathom what had happened. Luckily, Andy's mom was all right, and when I finally got through the cell phone grid, my friends were okay, but I remember talking to one of them, and just the complete mayhem. Her, I don't know if he was her husband or fiance at the time, was working in the Pentagon, and she was just devastated, crying, couldn't get in touch with him, and so I couldn't begin to imagine what was happening, you know, in New York City or, no kidding, in D.C. that day.
And I was serving as a reservist at that point in time and was a platoon sergeant. And it wasn't a matter of a couple hours and my phone started ringing, and it wasn't just random, hey man, did you see what happened, what's going on, or anything like that. There were phone calls coming from the bottom and from the top. Marines wanting to know what information was out there. Commanding officer, first sergeant, platoon commander calling me directly and asking for information, asking me who I'd heard from, you know, and just trying to get their finger on the pulse of how quickly can you stand everybody up? How quickly can you get your platoon or your squad of Marines together and be ready to go do battle?
We were all pretty pissed off. That doesn't happen in America. You don't get attacked on American soil. So we were all just ready to do whatever we were told to do at that point. And for the bases at that, you know, everything shuts down. I think we might have all gotten told to go home that day because, I mean, there's no reaction plan for that. It had never happened. So security got locked down and all these things, and we're out in the middle of the desert, but nobody knew what, you know, we've got an airfield full of Harriers. You don't know what's next. So obviously my day was nothing even remotely close to what other people were experiencing that day, but I can imagine that September 11th will be a lot like when JFK was shot, or you know, those significant events in America that shaped Americans and shaped our culture, that you will always remember where you were that day. Like my mom knows where she was when JFK was killed. Well, I can remember exactly what stretch I was doing that morning when I got the news.
My girlfriend at the time, you know, we talked about it. The Marines, we all talked about it. Even my coworkers. Oh my God, you know, when are you going to Iraq now, or wherever? So just after that moment, once the second plane hit, it turned in from, oh, freak, oddity, accident to, okay, game time. This is serious. You know, war is imminent. Maybe you could say, or definitely will be forthcoming. So.
The 9/11 attacks had immediate and overwhelming effects upon the American people. Many police officers and rescue workers elsewhere in the country took leaves of absence to travel to New York City to assist in the process of recovering bodies from the twisted remnants of the Twin Towers. Blood donations across the U.S. also saw a surge in the weeks after 9/11. At 2:40 p.m. in the afternoon of September 11th, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was issuing rapid orders to his aides to look for evidence of Iraqi involvement, according to notes taken by senior policy official Stephen Cambone. Best into fast. Judge whether good enough hit SH. SH meaning Saddam Hussein. At same time, not only UBL, Osama bin Laden. Cambone's notes quoted Rumsfeld as saying, need to move swiftly. Near-term target needs, go massive, sweep it all up, things related and not. The NATO Council declared that the attacks on the United States were considered an attack on all NATO nations, and as such, satisfied Article 5 of the NATO Charter. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the Bush administration announced a war on terrorism, with the stated goals of bringing Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda to justice and preventing the emergence of other terrorist networks. These goals would be accomplished by means which included economic and military sanctions against states perceived as harboring terrorists, and increasing global surveillance and intelligence sharing.
Immediately after the September 11th attacks, there was great sympathy for the United States around the world. A lot of personal, political, all kinds of sympathy. And some of it had practical political implications. At the United Nations Security Council, for example, there was almost immediately a resolution that authorized essentially self and collective defense against these attacks. And NATO, for the first time in its history, invoked Article 5 of its charter, which was basically the right to collective defense, which meant that one member state had been attacked, so all the other member states would agree to provide resources to come to its defense. Right? It's kind of remarkable because NATO was created with the idea that the U.S. would come to the defense of Western Europe, but the first actual invocation of the treaty was the European allies saying they would come to the defense of the U.S., who had been attacked by this ambiguous, non-state force. I mean, the whole alliance had been created with the idea that it would be the Soviet threat and its allies that would attack. I think basically NATO has made good on the promise that it made almost immediately after the attack. I mean, within days, if not hours, that this was a clear violation of the NATO Charter. A member state had been under attack.
Once again, America and the Marines were going to war.